Well, good morning or good day, whichever time you're listening to this. I'm your friendly U.S. history teacher, Dale Fritch, and I'm going to show you in this video the process of working through your unit review, and along the way, I'm hoping also how to take more effective, more efficient notes. So let's begin. I have pretty limited time. It's 8:27 in the morning when I'm recording this, and our first asynchronous class time starts in about 30 minutes. So that automatically kind of gives me a time limit to work with. I'm currently showing you or sharing with you your class page. This is for block 5. Block 6 should be exactly the same. I'm going to double check that as soon as the video is over with. But right now you can see a little bit more simplified unit structure. I have what's a new link now with the unit review up top, the individual folders for the 2 chapters of study in the order we're studying them. I think I added the dates. I'm not sure if that was there the last time. And I'll check that later. I forgot what I did with that. So sorry, you get the video warts and all. The first thing you're going to see on your class page is when you click on this link, and I think you can go either way, but I'm going to go the quicker route. When you click on this link, it's going to force a copy on you. And what this does, it's kind of my temporary workaround to emulate at least part of Google Classroom. But what this is doing is sharing an individualized copy of a document with you without having to make this an assignment and going through all those extra steps of Schoology. So this is going to put the ball kind of in your court a little bit. You're going to have to make a copy and then also find a place to organize it in your Google Drive. We may run into a problem in the future about in terms of submission or how do you turn this into me. So I'll probably regret this, but this is what I'm going to try for now, and we'll figure the workaround as we go along. It's just our process for this new era of COVID-19. So as a student, go back to here. You'll click make a copy, and then that will force, like I said, open a copy of the document that you'll be gazing upon here shortly. I am going to go ahead and make this full screen, get rid of all those distractions up top, and begin our tour now. Let me take a quick sip of delicious coffee. This broadcast brought to you by coffee, the fuel of teachers everywhere. Anywho's, so this review is going to, for some students, take the place of any of their other notes or reading guides. As I mentioned, I think in the previous class, notes for this class are optional. We never ask for you to turn them in for at least a grade. There are some prerequisites and some like add-on addendums for expectations about notes and things like that we'll get to in a little bit. But this review, I think, is probably the most efficient way for you to take your notes. It's certainly the most thoughtful way because it does force you to think. And I am highly prescribing that as a student, you consider adopting this style of note-taking. You'll notice as I scroll down the page, it tells you that this is Unit 1, 1865 to 1901. There is a very intriguing image of a pretty intense-looking, cranky old dude with an intense scowl on his face. And then this other weird-looking creature, old dude, seemingly bursting out of the other old dude's chest. And many students are freaked out by this image. And the only thing I can tell you is it'll make sense by the end of the unit. So I try to pick strange pictures or pieces of historical ephemera that I find amusing, and I put them on the front of these things. So that's all I did here. So you're welcome. Now, here's sort of like the basic introduction, some things for you to consider. I'm not going to read every one of these bullet points. This is sort of like a quick instructional highlight reel, and I'm hoping that students will take the time to read this in more detail on their own, maybe during asynchronous time, maybe during their homework, when they're not online, whatever. So just the quick highlights, and I'll kind of light them up as we move along. The first thing that you'll notice, especially if you speak with other students in the pre-IB program or other students taking APUSH, that this review looks a bit like the APUSH review, and that's because that's what we used as the starting point. What I want to emphasize is that this review has specifically been designed for and adapted to the U.S. History IB prep class. We cut out certain things we didn't feel were necessary. We actually had to restructure some of the events to fit the time periods, the units of study that we're covering, sometimes covering a little bit differently. But this will be one of the few pieces of connective tissue that the U.S. History IB prep class shares with the APUSH or a pre-IB APUSH class. So I don't want people to freak out like he's cramming APUSH down our throats or anything like that. But there is a similarity. You will notice it. And the goal, though, because a good history class is a good history class, the goal is pretty similar. It's to help you kind of piece together the smaller events of history, to synthesize them into something more useful, and especially maybe something more useful for in terms of essays or unit tests. I think that sometimes students approach history as a bunch of individualized random fact nuggets that they kind of memorize and then regurgitate on the multiple choice tests and things like that. And we are going to have some multiple choice quizzes. They'll be very low level and very low in terms of their overall weight for the grade. But we're not going to have any multiple choice tests with maybe the exception of the midterm. I don't know. That's something we're still talking about right now. Most of your assessments are going to be writing in this class. Most of your graded unit assessments, I should say, summative assessments. So you do need to kind of think more synthetically or more. You need to put things together. So that's what this review is asking you to do. Right now, I'm saying that the tentative due date for the review is September 15th. That's the day we'll be taking our summative unit test. That's the end of the first unit. That actually also is a coincidence with APUSH. That was strictly a coincidence. I thought that was kind of cool. And the last few points here is all about like academic integrity and retakes. So here's how our homework policy basically comes into play. As long as you are happy with the grade you earned, you can take notes however you want. And that's the short version. Now, as soon as you show dissatisfaction with a grade and you want my help, or if you have, heaven forbid, you failed an assessment and then you want to do a retake, this is when I will ask you as the teacher, hey, well, show me your notes. In particular, show me your review. And this is where some potential problems could happen. If you didn't do the review, I'm going to say, well, it seems like that's a natural consequence. You didn't do the review, you failed the test, so good luck. Try next time. And that's going to be the beginning and end of the conversation. I do not extend the courtesy of retakes to students who don't do the review. So it's optional, but there's consequences. You can almost think of the review like an insurance policy. Now, that being said, some students attempt to plagiarize or copy the review, basically copy an insurance policy. That way, if something goes wrong, they'll have that and they can, flip it toward my direction and they think they'll be hunky-dory. Well, if it turns out that your work is copied either from another student or more likely from a source on the internet, then if I find that out, and I do more often than what students would expect, then we run into all those problems of any kind of academic, integrity issue. I don't issue warnings. I don't let you off with a, slap on the wrist and say, oh, well, maybe you've learned your lesson. I give an office referral and I'm done with it. At this late in the game with all these students who are advanced level students, you know what cheating is, and I'm not going to waste my time any further. So that's all I'm going to say on that. I don't want to get too cranky first thing in the morning. I'm still working on my coffee. Now, the next page, and I am going to make this fast, but I know you have a video, so you can always rewind it. You can slow it down. You can do whatever. This is a full page dedicated on how to read and how to take notes. It's called the SQR3 method. before you skip through this, because you say to yourself, Mr. Fritch, I'm a very intelligent student. I know how to take notes, or I'm not going to take notes because I think I'm that intelligent. Please think again. I want to scroll to the bottom, do a little bit of historical sourcing, and show that this came from Dartmouth College. That's not a shabby place. It has been around since 1946. In fact, if you were to visit almost any college web page, or maybe college in college in person, we could still say that maybe again. But if you were to visit any like freshman orientation class, any college webpage on how to, be a freshman at our college, and these are usually top colleges and top universities, they will all basically have the same kind of instructions you're looking at here. So if you are an intelligent student, if you are an advanced student, you will read this page because it's the smart thing to do. I'm telling you in the long term that this will make you a faster reader. You'll take faster, more efficient notes, and you'll get higher grades. I mean, I don't know how else to sell that, except I do have a quick anecdote, and I will make it quick. About 10, 12, 13 years ago, I had a sophomore in one of my classes. Very engaged student. They said, good student. They sat through the whole year. They did pretty well. And then they, came back to me a few years later. They're a senior now in high school, and they're just kind of talking. And then along the way, they say, "Hey, Mr. Fritch, you remember that SQR3 thing you taught us?" And I was kind of like, "Yeah," because I teach that to every one of my students every year that I've taught. So yeah. And then they said, "Well, I finally tried it." I want you to keep in mind they're a senior now. They said, "I finally tried it, and it works." And they were like surprised, and I guess they expected me to be surprised too. Like, "It did? Oh my goodness, I never thought." Well, of course it did. I was just like, well, I guess better late than never. Maybe I'm the Johnny Appleseed of teaching. I spread, the seeds, and eventually they germinate and they grow and they finally bear fruit. I don't know, 2 years later, but still. So, quick anecdote, but more to the point, let's get back to the nitty gritty of how to do this. It's first two steps we can almost combine. You scan and question. You see what the assignment is. You're going to do a quick overview of the assignment itself. And this is a skimming process. As you're doing this, you're also questioning, and you're thinking about like what are some of the things you recognize. What are some hooks? What are the ways they might signpost things like boldface vocabulary, section titles, things like that. And what you're trying to do is actualize prior knowledge, what we call also scaffolding. You're trying to, get your brain basically ready for what you're going to encounter. You should come across things that you've maybe seen before. You're like, "Oh yeah, I kind of recognize that old guy," or "I think I remember hearing a story about that," or "That looks familiar," or maybe like, "Whoa, that sounds really different or really interesting." So you're just getting ready for it so you don't have too many big surprises. You don't want to be surprised when reading for an academic class. It's different from reading like fiction for enjoyment. So you just do a quick survey of the reading. Maybe you look at if there are any maps, any pictures, any captions, but it's very quick, and this takes like 3-5 minutes tops. You're not writing anything down. You're just scanning through. Now, here's the fun part. After you do that, and you briefly reflect and think about, "Oh, this is going to be kind of interesting," or whatever, you start reading. And here, these are what looks like pretty basic directions. You shouldn't have any distractions. You shouldn't be multitasking. You try to avoid clicking on other things. You just want like a quick read. You go straight, from I shouldn't say straight from the beginning to end, but you read the text. Sometimes you want to maybe see how the author is connecting their arguments together. You want to pay attention to like their logical structures, things like that. That's something you'll learn as you plow more into the text. But you're going to read through a chunk of text, and chunk is going to be subjective for students. You can read through an entire page. If we had pages on this book, you can read through an entire section. Maybe you read through a paragraph or 2 paragraphs or whatever at a time. But when I get to the next step, and this is crucial here, you should finish an entire chunk of reading And you have to define how big that chunk is before your quote brain is full. But as you finish that, then you pause and you go to take notes in the appropriate place. You should resist the urge of ping-ponging back and forth from reading a sentence and then writing something down, and reading another sentence or two and writing something down. You're like a cat chasing a laser point when you do this. Your brain is never concentrating on anything. It ends up just becoming you copying. And copying is not thinking. You should read a section, you should finish it, you should find a place where it's recorded in your notes, and you should first off see what you can do by memory. I mean, you just read the thing after all, and you write the things down that you memorize, and then when you realize, oh wait, I forgot what was the number again, or what was that date, or how did you spell that, then you can quickly look back at your text and go, oh yeah, and then you fill that in. So read for a chunk, write for a chunk, fill in the gaps. That is critical. And I mean that. This is maybe the number one mistake students make when they attempt SQR3. They don't allow themselves the time, or they don't trust themselves to read enough before they transition to writing. And when you do transition to writing, try to record the notes as much as possible in your own words. Every now and then, it's very easy just to copy and paste, or just to copy, word by word, like a short sentence, and that's fine. But when you're finding that all you're doing is rewriting the textbook, you're wasting your time, man. You're wasting your freaking time. Just read the textbook at that point. Just highlight the textbook. I can promise you that with no matter how much practice, your handwriting is not as neat and not as consistent as the print in the book. So there's not too much to be gained just from transcribing. There is a little, but I don't think it's enough to merit the practice. And above all, it's not a sustainable strategy for college. Your hands are going to fall off if you copy everything down from a book onto a piece of paper. That's not efficient learning. So what I'm trying to do is get you to be efficient. Now, the last step is that you should actually reread your notes. I have students who have told me right to my face that their study strategy is they read the book and then they read the book again. And I'm like, why would you want to subject yourself to that torture? Why not read the book and have highlighted passages or have keynotes, and then that's your main way of studying again. If you do truly need to reference something, like get an exact quote or something from the text, that's fine. That's what we do in academia. But we do not read everything twice as preparation, for an assessment or as preparation for anything. We take good notes, and then we can consult reference materials when they're needed. So I think it was Mark Twain once who said, never memorize anything you can write down. I don't know, maybe I should have put that on a note somewhere. I guess I can look it up. So whatever. Now, I'm going to move along. This is going to speed things up because, again, I got to finish in now 15 minutes. We have these learning objectives, and these are lifted straight from the AP review. They are, as they listed here, I have blue annotative comments to kind of give you guides or instructions. They are used to help you frame your information. Think of it as a conceptual lens. And a few of these I've crossed out because they're not in your unit of study. Oh, I got to make that one blue later on. So I didn't want to completely delete them because they are lettered learning objective A, B, C, whatever. So if I skip from B to D, I could just imagine everybody going, what happened to C? And people freaking out. So I just put a strike through on it. And for the students who are maybe, concerned about the AP test, this might be comforting that you can see, wait a minute, I'm being given kind of enough overlapping information and enough of kind of a conceptual lens for me to maybe at least think about the topics in a similar enough way. But, again, you're not being asked to do push work. We're just kind of like translating some of this information, I guess. So I'm not going to read through these objectives. You'll see them come back up again. But you see there's, it looks like about 12 or so. The next page should be familiar. You've seen this picture before. This looks like the reading guide you were handed on day one. It has the same terms. I just listed it as though the picture and the terms because I actually covered the SQR3 instructions in full on a previous page. Here's the other chapter. Same thing. Title, yes, we're reading chapter 16 after 17. I know that freaks people out. Not as much as this guy who's getting shot in the face. I guess he's probably freaked out right there. And then we have more terms. Fine. Now let's finally get to the work. And this is where I can go through your actual process of where to take notes, how to take notes, and then finish the video. So just like the A-Push review, this is a concept outline. You can kind of think of it as a regular outline where, it's written in bulleted forms and things like that. It's a combination of an outline and Cornell notes. You'll see that the main body of notes, I'm just skimming real quick, is kind of divided up into 2 columns. So that's the structure. This is 14 pages of notes. Well, I shouldn't say 14 pages. People hyperventilate. The first 6 pages are kind of instructions and terms. So it's about 8 pages of notes for 2 chapters. That's not too shabby. And again, you can choose the amount of work and investment you want to put into this. So I don't even know if it has to be 8 full pages. You have these learning objectives up top that are in black, and the notation below is that these are super big questions that are basically covered in the entire unit. The context, think of the context, the historical context is the background for the rise of capitalism. And then the next one is explain the extent to which industrialization brought change. So there's a myriad of ways we could demonstrate change from industrialization in this time period. And a lot of the rest of the review actually talks about that. So these are really big questions. I'm never going to turn around on the day of the test and say, here is your essay question. That's too wide, too much. But we do begin to hone in a little bit, and you can think of these sections in gray as possible essay questions. So it even says right there, this might be your future essay question. And we've been known in the past just to steal the essay questions straight from the review. So I'm telling you, the review is valuable in the very least that you want to read it so you'll be aware of what might be on the test. So take that as you will. Now we have 4 of these learning objectives up top. Somewhere on the page below, they're addressed. And many of these things overlap. That's why it's not very easy where you can just put a question and then have you write out the answer underneath it. So, excuse me, causes and effects of the settlement of the West. Explain the effects of tech advances. I'm not going to read all these. It'd be silly. But we have all these questions. And then we have what you can think of as a thesis statement here, and then topic sentences here. If you want to think of like an essay structure, this is basically kind of like some of the structuring of how to write an academic essay right here. But what I've done in the main body is I've identified a few things. These points on the left are like topic sentences or mini thesis statements. And this, again, is helping you kind of shape the information or figure out what information to look for to include in your review. Between that and the fact that over here, I've actually indexed at the top of each section where I think you will find the answer to this review. Doing a lot of baby stepping, a lot of stair stepping here to kind of get you more accustomed to this. This tells me that if I want to know where to find out the answer following the Civil War, I could find government subsidies for transportation, communication, opening up new markets. Well, that's something you read. That was in American Yawp, chapter 17. That was throughout sections 1 and 2, and it shows up again in section 5. So the chapter and sections are pre-populated. The notes below, I've kind of color-coded and underlined and showing you the examples of what kind of notes I took from those sections. And I didn't write down everything. All I'm trying to do are find things that relate to government subsidies and opening up new markets, because this is kind of a cause and effect relationship right here. So here's what I have about, government subsidies and monopolies. And then I'm looking for something about new markets. Well, your book talks a lot about hub cities like Chicago. And it gave a nice specific example of the cattle industry. And I kind of just summarized that. That's all I did. I don't need to learn everything there is to know about American history in this class. I need to learn enough, and I need to be thinking about what I'm learning. And that's more important than just trying to memorize everything. I describe below here kind of the annotation system using Arabic and Roman numerals, and I think I have semicolons. But the rest of this is what you see, where there is usually an essay question-ish kind of guide, a topic sentence or a thesis that might help you zoom in a little bit more to an answer, and then a topic sentence that helps you zoom in more, and then finally where you'll find it in the reading. I hope. I'll admit there might be some mistakes, but I think I'm pretty spot on. You'll notice that this goes back and forth all over the place. 17 here, 16 there, 16 again. So as a student tonight, when I'm going to be reading chapter 17 sections, and I have to check my homework page super duper fast, chapter 17, believe it or not, I don't have all this memorized. Oh, good. We get to wait for Schoology to load up a page. I'm looking at sections 3, 4, and 5 for tonight's homework. That's 17.2, Indian Wars, Beyond the Plains, and the Allotment Era. So sections 3, 4, and 5, all I'm doing at that point is looking for chapter 17, sections 3, 4, and 5, and then I know where to take notes. All right, so far I'm not seeing it. Oh, wait, there's one. Chapter 17, section 1 through 4. No. No, there's a little bit there, but not much. I'm looking for stuff about what happens with Native Americans. It looks like I've actually filled in some examples from your homework from the previous night. You're welcome to add in some more things if you feel like it's necessary, but I'm only looking for 1 or 2 key examples per box. I'm not going to fill up everything I know because I don't need to do that. Here's something where we're starting to get into your homework tonight. In fact, I can go ahead and tell you most of everything that you're reading tonight about Native Americans pretty much fits on page 12 right here. And I've highlighted it for you. This is in your homework tonight. So there's chapter 17, and I put sections 1 through 6, but really more precisely, a lot of this is in 1, 3, 4, and 6. So there's the main page for tonight's reading on Native Americans. Now, can you take any extra pages of notes if something else pops up? Sure, you can just type in in the review. That's where I would do it. I would just maybe add a page break and put it in there. You can have a separate notebook. I don't care. You're going to take your notes your way, however you want, but very likely on the day of the test, we're going to say, please show us, please hand in, please give us a copy of your unit review. And you could turn it in totally blank. You could turn it in complete, but this is all we want to see from you would be the unit review. So any other notes you take, that's your own doing. Okay, that is my whole spiel, and I finished within time. I'm hoping that students will watch this during their asynchronous moment today, or at least between today and next class. And if students don't watch it, that's kind of their responsibility and their consequences. But I'm comforted in the fact that I now don't have to use this 20 to 30 minutes of class time to explain this process, which while I do feel is important, is not the most exciting thing to do as a teacher. But again, exciting versus necessary, those aren't necessarily always one and the same. But it's kind of like vitamins. You have to do it. It's good for you, and I wish you the best. If you have any questions about the review process, please ask me, please let me know. But I think this is the perfect time to end the video and to have one more sip of coffee. So thank you once again for joining us. I will be back with you later. Bye.